country music for a living, and how did it actually start for you?
Well, I didn't realize that you even got paid for it. At the beginning, I started off singing in churches and things like that. And
In the cathedral of country music, there are many great singers, but there is only one voice. A voice that was a raw, exposed nerve of human emotion. A voice that could convey a lifetime of heartbreak in a single, perfectly bent note. That voice belonged to George Jones. He was, by the consensus of legends from Frank Sinatra to Keith Richards, the single greatest singer in the history of country music. He was the Possum, a man whose face could contort into a mask of pure agony as he sang, channeling the deepest sorrows of the human experience. His signature song, "He Stopped Loving Her Today," is not just a country classic, it is widely regarded as one of the greatest songs ever recorded in any genre. But the same man who possessed this angelic God-given instrument was also possessed by a legion of personal demons. His life was a public spectacle of self-destruction. For decades, he was a raging alcoholic and a violent cocaine addict. His legendary unreliability earned him the infamous nickname No-Show Jones, as he missed hundreds of concerts, leaving fans and promoters furious. His personal life was a chaotic storm of 4 marriages, violent outbursts, and brushes with the law. And in one of the most iconic and bizarre tales in all of music history, after his wife hid his car keys to prevent a drunken trip to the liquor store, he famously drove a riding lawnmower 8 miles down a Texas highway to get his booze. He was a brilliant, tormented genius. And into this whirlwind of heartache and honky-tonks, 4 children were born. In this video, we will tell the complete, inside the honky-tonk and deeply personal stories of Susan Jeffrey Bryan and Georgette, the 4 children of the legendary Possum George Jones. They were born across 3 different marriages, each experiencing a different chapter of their father's chaotic life. From his early struggles to his superstar no-show years, his epic and violent marriage to Tammy, Wynette, and his final hard-won redemption. We will explore the life of his first and most private daughter, Susan Jones, who was born before the legend truly began and lived her life almost entirely removed from the spotlight. We will look at the lives of his 2 sons with his second wife, Shirley, and Corley, Jeffrey, and Bryan Jones, the boys who grew up in the eye of the hurricane during their father's wildest and most self-destructive years. And we will delve into the incredible and iconic story of Tamala Georgette Jones, the only child of country music's most famous, most celebrated, and most turbulent marriage, the union of George Jones and the First Lady of country music, Tammy Wynette. To bring you this epic country music saga, we have gone deep into the archives of the Grand Ole Opry, read the candid and often brutal autobiographies of George Jones and Tammy Wynette, and analyzed the powerful memoirs and rare interviews given by his children. This is the story of the family behind the greatest voice country music has ever known. Part 1. Susan Jones, the daughter in the distance. She was the first child born before the legend was forged, before the platinum records, and before the chaos truly began. Her story is one of a daughter who was a footnote in her famous father's early life, a child of a forgotten first marriage who chose a life of near total privacy, a world away from the honky-tonk fame and public heartache that would define the rest of his family. This is the quiet story of Susan Jones. Born in 1950, Susan Jones was the only child from George Jones's first and very brief marriage to Dorothy Bonvillion. Their union was a teenage mistake, a short-lived and turbulent affair that ended in divorce in 1951 when Susan was just a baby. George Jones at this point was still a young, struggling musician in East Texas, years away from his first hit, years away from becoming a star. As a result, Susan's upbringing was almost entirely separate from her father's celebrity life. While he was paying his dues and then becoming a star on the Louisiana Hayride and the Grand Ole Opry, Susan was being raised by her mother, Dorothy. Her story is defined by its profound privacy and her distance from the Nashville machine. She did not grow up backstage. She did not grow up on a tour bus watching her father sign autographs. She grew up as a normal girl in Texas whose biological father just happened to be one of the most famous and most troubled men in country music. This distance likely spared her from the direct daily chaos that her younger half-siblings would endure. She was not a witness to the no-show years or the violent fights with Tammy Wynette. But this distance also came at a cost, the absence of a father. Throughout her life, Susan has maintained a near total silence. She has never given public interviews, never written a memoir, and has never been a part of the public narrative of the Jones family, which has been so dominated by his later, more famous wives and children. Her life is a testament to the choice of normalcy. It's the story of the one child who, by circumstance and by deliberate choice, escaped the direct chaos and pressure that would so profoundly affect her siblings. She represents the quiet, forgotten first chapter in the long and complicated family story of George Jones, a reminder of a life he left behind before he became a legend. While Susan's life was lived in the quiet periphery, George Jones's next two children, his sons, would be born directly into the eye of the hurricane. They would grow up during his wildest, most successful, and most dangerously self-destructive years. Part 2. Jeffrey Jones, a son of the storm. He was the firstborn son born as his father's star was exploding across the country music landscape. But this was also the time when his father's addictions were beginning to take a deadly hold. He grew up in the eye of the hurricane, witnessing the genius and the madness firsthand. How did Jeffrey Jones navigate a childhood with a father who was both a country music king and the infamous No-Show Jones? Jeffrey Jones, born in 1955, was the first son of George and his second wife, Shirley Ann Corley. His childhood coincided with his father's rise to superstardom and his simultaneous descent into legendary alcoholism. He was the boy who had a father who could deliver a breathtaking, soul-shattering performance on the Opry stage one night and then disappear on a drunken, violent bender for weeks at a time. He and his younger brother Bryan grew up in a world of immense and damaging contradiction. They experienced the perks of fame, the money, the access, but they also lived with the deep instability and fear that came with their father's addictions. Their parents' marriage was a tumultuous 14-year roller coaster of fights and reconciliations, which finally ended in a bitter divorce in 1968, when Jeffrey was a young teenager. As an adult, Jeffrey, like his older half-sister Susan, has largely chosen to live his life outside of the direct spotlight. This decision was almost certainly a reaction to the chaos and the public scrutiny he witnessed and endured as a child. He did not pursue a career in the music industry. He has remained a private citizen, building a life for himself away from the Nashville scene. In the years following their father's death, he has occasionally participated in tribute events honoring his father's musical genius. But he has largely left the public storytelling to his younger half-sister Georgette, who had a very different and even more public experience. His story is a quiet testament to the resilience of a child who survived a chaotic and often painful upbringing at the hands of a brilliant but deeply troubled father. Like his brother Jeffrey, the second son of George and Shirley Corley was also a child of the chaos, a witness to the same storm. But he would find his own way to connect with the family's musical roots on his own quiet terms. Part 3. Bryan Jones, the musical echo. Like his older brother, he was born into the heart of the storm. He witnessed the same glory and the same chaos. But for Bryan Jones, the legacy he inherited was not the fame or the demons, but a simple, quiet love for the music itself. Born in 1958, Bryan Jones was the second son of George and Shirley. He was just a boy during his father's most notorious no-show years of the 1960s. He too experienced the pain of his parents' divorce and the difficulty of having a father who was a larger-than-life and often absent public figure. Like his brother Jeffrey, Bryan has also chosen a life largely away from the public eye. But unlike his brother, he did inherit a piece of the family's musical gene in a more direct way. According to reports and family accounts, Bryan became a musician and singer in his own right. He reportedly played with a traveling country music show for many years, living a life that was a quieter, more workmanlike echo of the one his famous father led. He embraced the music, but not the fame. He chose the simple joy of performing in honky-tonks and local venues, rather than chasing the Nashville stardom that had brought his father both immense success and immense pain. His story is a fascinating look at the nature of inherited talent. It is the story of a son who loved the music that made his father famous, but who was wise enough, perhaps, to choose a different, more peaceful path for himself. He, too, has remained a private figure, only occasionally stepping forward for family tributes, a quiet musician in the shadow of the greatest voice of all. The chaos Jeffrey and Bryan endured was but a prelude to the main event. Their father's next marriage to the queen of country music, Tammy Wynette, would become the most celebrated, the most mythologized, and the most destructive love story in the history of Nashville. And it would produce one child, a daughter, who would inherit all the glory, the heartache, and the music. Part 4. Tammy Georgette Jones, the heiress of the Heartache. She is the daughter of country music royalty, the only child born from the epic, violent, and legendary love story of George Jones and Tammy Wynette. She grew up in a world of #1 duets and drunken gun-wielding rages. She is the living embodiment of a classic country song. This is the incredible story of Georgette Jones. Born in 1970, Tammy Georgette Jones was from the moment of her birth a Nashville princess. As the only child of George Jones and the First Lady of country music, Tammy Wynette, she was at the absolute center of the country music universe. Her parents were the reigning king and queen, recording classic, heart-wrenching duets like Golden Ring and We're Gonna Hold On that seemed to mirror their own tumultuous love affair. But the beautiful, tragic love story the public saw on stage and on their album covers was only half the story. The reality at home, as Georgette would later reveal, was a terrifying storm of passionate love, intertwined with her father's severe alcoholism, cocaine addiction, and frightening domestic violence. Georgette's childhood was a roller coaster of extreme, glittering highs and devastating, dangerous lows. In her powerful and brutally honest 2011 memoir, The Three of Us Growing Up with Tammy and George, Georgette detailed the chaos with unflinching clarity. She wrote of her deep and abiding love for both of her larger-than-life parents, but also of the terrifying reality of living with her father's addictions. She recounted the infamous and chilling incident where a drunken George Jones, believing another man was in the house, began firing a shotgun inside their home, while she and her mother hid in fear. Her parents' legendary marriage ended in a bitter and very public divorce when she was just 4 years old. Like both of her parents, Georgette was blessed with a beautiful, powerful singing voice. For years, she tried to live a normal life, working as a registered nurse in Alabama. But the pull of her musical heritage was too strong. She eventually embarked on her own career as a country music singer. The pressure of having two of the greatest and most distinctive voices in the history of the genre, as her parents, was and is immense. In his later years, after George Jones finally achieved sobriety with the help of his fourth wife, Nancy, he and Georgette reconnected on a deep and beautiful level. In a series of poignant full-circle moments, she would often join him on stage during his concerts to sing duets with him. Their performances of songs like You and Me in Time were filled with a lifetime of pain, love, and forgiveness. She has released her own albums and continues to tour performing her own music, as well as the classic songs of her legendary parents. Today, Georgette Jones is the primary keeper of the flame for two of country music's most important and most tragic legacies. Her perspective is completely unique, having seen the best and the worst of both icons up close. Her story is one of survival, forgiveness, and the incredible enduring power of the music that is woven into her very DNA. Together, the lives of the four Jones children tell a powerful and cautionary story of survival in the shadow of a voice that was both an angelic gift and a demonic curse. A private daughter, two quiet sons, and a princess of country music, who inherited both the glory and the heartache. Each found their own way to live with the legacy of the greatest and most troubled singer country music has ever known. This theme of the children of a trailblazing musical icon, a true giant of his genre, is something we have explored before on this channel. In a previous video, we dove into the world of a very different kind of musical legend, David Gilmour, the iconic voice and masterful guitar of the groundbreaking band Pink Floyd. We explored his incredible journey and his role in creating some of the most ambitious and timeless music ever recorded. You can watch that definitive story by clicking the link right here. And his large creative family tells a fascinating story about art, fatherhood, and building a different kind of dynasty. We are currently developing a deep dive, David Gilmour's 8 Children, the Untold Story. To explore that incredible musical family, be sure to subscribe and have hit that notification bell.